So in the last video, we finished off the registering of an account on the Fasetto Word server. And the only bit we didn't do was really sending the user an email verification link to click to verify their email. So I did a spin-off onto the web development series to show you how to make an email HTML template. That is now on the GitHub YouTube repo in email template. And effectively the output is this, if I turn off my dark theme, which for some reason is still showing dark. Oh, that's because it's a local file. I can't turn off the dark theme on local file for some reason. Maybe I can just disable the whole thing for a minute. There we go. So this is the email template we made, basically. So we've got that. You can, if you don't want to make that and you just want to take, the precompiled output, then it's in this YouTube repo, and we can use that output as we go forward. But that's now the email we want to send. So that's what we're going to do in this video, is to actually send it when required here. And to do that, we are going to do initially, we're going to make use of a service to send the email for us. And then we will do an additional one where we can send it directly just using SMTP. So I'll do initially a decent one, a service dedicated to handling mass emails, which really I want to use in the Fasetto Word application. But then I'll also show you an alternate way of doing it with just SMTP in case you want to keep the cost down for yourselves. So what we're going to use is something called SendGrid. So you can use any you want, but if we just go to SendGrid.com, so I just type in SendGrid.com, it will take us to this website. Now it is free, and if you're going to do low volume emails, like 100 a month, it's free. So all you need to do is try for free. Sign up for a free account, just enter your email, name and address, and then initially you get 40,000 emails you could send, but obviously we won't send that many, and then it'll revert to a free 100 emails a month account. So go ahead and sign up for this, and then you'll get to the login screen. And then this is the screen you should be presented with once you've signed up for an account. If not, just go to the drop down here and click Setup Guide. And you'll get this option. So this will send emails on our behalf. So you can see we've got a drop down here, and we can integrate using popular apps that we're not using. We're making our own. Build and send marketing campaigns, not interested right now. We basically want this one. Integrate using our web API. So we'll click start on this one, and then it's recommending the web API as opposed to directly sending an SMTP. So we're going to go ahead and use the web API, and then we're going to choose C# and basically follow the setup guide. So our library requires .NET 4.5.2, which is fine. Make an API key. So this will be for our entire application. So we'll just call this Fasetto Word and create key. And all I'll do is delete this key and recreate it on the, after this video. So it's not, you don't see this. So we need to make use of this key. Create an environment variable, update the developer, blah, 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 install package, and then send first email. Their website's messed up. Let me just fix that a minute. Iframe's got a height on for some reason. There we go. So they want us to, bad looks of it, install SendGrid as a package, and then take this code. So let's just take the code. This is what they want us to use in essence. So we'll just copy that bit, and we'll open up the Fasetto Word server. And then in here, I guess now we don't want to just send it directly here. So we obviously want to make use of dependency injection and to do this properly. So we'll have an interface that will send emails, and then we'll implement that interface. To be honest, we could implement it directly in the core as simply one of the implementations, as a built-in one to our application. And then we're free to swap that out if somebody else wanted to. So we'll make a folder called email. We'll make a new class. We'll call it SendGrid email sender. and it's just in core public class. We'll inherit an interface and we'll make an interface shortly. Let me just make a function to dump this code in a minute. So this will be sends emails using the SendGrid service. Now the only thing about putting it directly in core is we're then going to have a dependency on SendGrid in core as a package. So we could pull it out and make another mini solution, but to be honest, it's that small. We can dump it in here, or we can dump it in here. So let's just flip this around and let's just dump it in the server instead. So it's not directly in core thinking about it. So we moved it over to the server here. And like I say, we can always pull this out and use it elsewhere. Just change the namespace to Fasetto Word web server. There's that. So it sends emails using the SendGrid service, and then we want to do things. All it's doing here then is getting the environment, pulling off the key. We won't use that. We'll make use of our IOC container that we have. So we already have an IOC container with configuration, and then this can be pulled in from our app settings.json file. So let's just chuck a key in here. So we'll just call it SendGrid key. And then we'll copy and paste that key here. So all we're doing is changing where we're loading it from. We'll put that in there, save that. So now we just want SendGrid key in here. So SendGrid key. So that will get the API key. The client is SendGrid client. So you can see we need this now. So if we right click on dependencies and manage NuGet packages, browse and type SendGrid. I'm presuming they've got it in NuGet. GitHub SendGrid, yeah, that's the official one. So install that. Accept that. And then control dot, and it should find it using SendGrid. Control dot again there, SendGrid helpers. And finally, this is just waiting for an await. So that code will compile now, and we could test that. But I'm happy that'll work, so we won't bother testing that for now. One thing I did notice though, if we right click on the solution, because we haven't done this in a while, manage NuGet packages for solution, and go to updates, and see we've got 6 updates. Just keep everything up to date as best you can. So select all, update, just get the whole, all these packages up to date, including my DNA framework, and then do a build to make sure everything builds after this. So I presume it's still updating, just taking a while. There we go. Right, so they're all updated, so that solution's up to date. This is just complaining about the name, just my convention. So we haven't broken anything in theory yet, so let's just try and compile. I think DNA framework might break actually, because I renamed the use keywords to add to match with .NET Core. Apparently not. Why not? I'm sure I did rename things. We're not using DNA framework in this yet. Oh no, sorry, I haven't integrated DNA framework into this yet. We will be doing that. So that's all good. We've got it in core, but we're not making use of it outside of there yet. So that's all the packages upgraded. We now have this. So let's start really thinking about this. So in terms of a generic send email, let's just call this send email. Let's start turning this into a function. We will want async because we need to await their code. So that means we'll return a task. We'll also have the response to send an email. I think we'll just make our own class up. So we'll just call it send email response, say. And that can lie in core. So let's just go ahead and create a folder in here in core, and we'll create a class called send email response, and that will be a class, a response from a send email call in for any, and then C, and we haven't made the interface yet, but it'll be I email sender implementation. And we'll want to obviously have certain details about what we're sending. So for that, I guess we'll have successful, whether it's successful or not. True if the email was sent successfully. And I guess the only other thing for now is an error message. We can handle and will handle in future error codes and unit testing and things, and this will evolve further. But for now, that isn't in our application, so we'll just do an error message. The error message if the sending failed. And to be honest, the successful could be an indication of the error message not being, or if the error message is null. If it's anything except null, then it's going to be a failure. So we only have to set the error message if we want it to be false. So let's say that's good enough for a response. We'll use that as a response. That is in core, so we've got to include the core namespace. Because this is a task, it should be send email async, and we can make the interface. To be honest, that's all the interface needs. So that can be I email sender, and then we'll make this interface. So just go to email sender will be, in theory it's in IOC because it's going to be injected. So I'll make a new class in there called I email sender, or a new interface rather. So public interface email sender. Handles sending emails. To be honest, I don't think there's much more to say about that. So a class or a service that handles sending emails on behalf of the caller. There's not much else to say. This call will then be in here without the async or the public. And this will be sends an email message with the given information. That also leads us down to needing to pass some information in. So I'll say send the email details and the details about the email to send. We also now need to make this send email details, which is going to contain, who it's going to, who it's coming from, what the message is, whether it's HTML or not, the whole details. So that'll be send email details in core again. And that'll be public class. We can copy that description. And now we have send email details. For this, we'll have the from name. Get, that's not a thing. The name of the sender. We'll have from email. The email of the sender. Same again for the to, so to email. The email of the receiver. And to name. The name of the receiver. Could be receiver or recipient, but it doesn't really matter. We'll have a subject. Email subject. What else have we got? We've got the content itself. The email body content. And then finally a flag indicating is HTML. Indicates if the contents is a HTML email. And I think that's all we need for send email details. So now we can pass in the details here. And now we have finally a function ready to do things. Not all code pass return a response, that's fine. Right, so now we have a nice structure. We have an email sender. We have the response that we can make. We have the details we can give. and we have the code that we'll do. For now, let's just return a new response. This will build, don't care about it. And we'll do this last. We'll now make the infrastructure for all this to kind of fit in and work, if you will. So what we want to do, we want to inject this into IOC. So we have the email sender. So we want to go to the startup, and we want to do similar to this, these extension methods. So how the add identity, you just do services.add identity. It's just an extension method like this. So we want to make an extension method. So in here, anywhere we really want to do it, I guess, we want to do up here, say, add SendGrid email sender. And we want to be able to do services.add SendGrid. So to do that, we'll need an extension method. So we've implemented it in here. So let's just do another class in the server application called SendGrid extensions, and remove that. That'll be a public static class. Extension methods for any SendGrid classes, or any SendGrid, don't know, screw it, just put classes. So in the extension method, all we need to do is return well, first it's got to be a static method inside a static class. That's how you do an extension method. We need to return an iService collection, and we need to then give it the name. So we'll say add SendGrid email sender, and then we do this to turn it into an extension method, and we also accept a service collection. So you're simply passing the service collection in and returning it back out and making use of it inside. And that's all. That's, you know, how ASP.NET Core does its little dot add this, dot add that, and you can, you know, like at the end of here now, we've done add identity, and then you notice there's no semicolon. We've done then dot add something else, and chain them all together. So that's what they do, and all you do here is return collection for chaining, and there's the service. So now if we were to go back to here, we could do services.add SendGrid email send, and you can see now it's already an extension method. So now we configure it like this, so it stays the same as all the other, you know, adding options. And then here now we need to inject the SendGrid email sender. So to do that, because this is going to be a class, and I'll talk a tiny bit about this. So dependency injection I've mentioned a few times and in multiple ways. That it's a good way to separate your concerns and to be able to construct your application here and inject specific implementations of certain interfaces or certain classes, so that you can simply invoke them. You can say, I want the provider dot get me this service, and I want an email sender service, and then anywhere in your whole application can access that service without knowing anything about it, without knowing the implementation. When you add a service to the dependency injection, you've got a few options. You can add a transient service, which means every single time you request it, it's a new copy. You can add a scoped service, which is if you start a scope that then handles the creation of elements, like in an ASP.NET controller. That's a scoped instance. It's almost like transient, but if the caller, the thing that's creating the class that you're then asking for other services inside of, it's the scope that handles returning those instances. Then you've got singletons, which are single instances. So for this, because all the email sender's really doing is every time it's spinning up a new class anyway, creating a new class, adding the stuff, sending it, and then being done, we'll just have this created every time. So we'll just make it a transient. So every single time you request it, you get a new copy. The benefit of that is once you're done, once you've sent the email and it's gone, it's no longer in memory. You're not keeping it in memory all the time like a singleton would be. So you're not using RAM on your machine. You're only using it on demand. And to do that transient, we want to implement an email sender. And the implementation of that will be the SendGrid email sender. And that's all we need to do. So that will now add our service. And now we can get that service back when we need it. So that's the extension method done. So injects the SendGrid email sender into the services to handle the email sender service. And that's really it. So that's the extension method done. We've added it in startup. So now we're at a point where we can actually make use of it and, you know, send something. So without us having to first get all the way to here and register an account to do some testing, we can just chuck it in the startup, and we can just go, once we've done the configuring, and we then do configure here, we've got the provider, and we use, let's just chuck it at the bottom of here. So the app spun up. This could be anywhere in the application, and it will ultimately be here when we're done. We'll first just get the service provider. So to do that, as if we are in a different part of the application, we use the IOC container and provider, which if we shift and F12, you'll see gets set here in the configure, which is where we are now. It's at the top. And this is just a static reference right now in our web server that will clean all this up and bake DNA framework into it. So this is accessible everywhere in every project. So this would be in core. But for now, it's the same principle. It's simply, this is accessible right now everywhere in our application for now. So it's good enough to make use of. So IOC container.provider gets us effectively this service provider that we just added everything to. This is your dependency injection provider. And now you can just ask for a service. So you can just say get service, email sender. And that will get us now the email sender. And now we can do .send email and then make a new email details. And so now this is effectively sending an email. So just to test this whole thing works and the dependency injection works, put a breakpoint on that. We'll put a breakpoint inside here. We could also, to show the transient working, I guess, just create a constructor for now and put a breakpoint here. So you'll see every time we hit it, we get a new version. We'll also then copy this twice so we can see it happening and that each time it's a different one. And then finally, we've got a breakpoint in here to see something happening. Comment that out. We don't want that actually running right now. So if we build and run this, we'll see hopefully the setup we've done working. So the site's spinning up. Then we should get to, there we go. So now it's going to ask the provider for an email sender. I'll press F11. And now you can see it's creating a new instance. And then it's now going into the send email call, which is what we want. And then for now, it's just going to return a function. We hit the next one, F11N, and you can see it's made another one. So each one, because it's transient, is creating a new, copy of that class, if you will, just a new instance. And then it'll call into our function. So that's what we want. That's now set up in the right way to handle being able to send emails. So we'll leave this in here for the minute for sending the email on startup. And we'll fill this with some actual content. So let's do some basic content first. This is our first HTML email. And then we'll do B with some bold text. That'll do. Well, to be honest, that's all we need just to show it's there. From email, so it's coming from, we'll say secret@website.com, just make up one. Then we'll have from name equals some guy. Is HTML, it's true, we should probably put that next to the content. And then we'll have to email. I want it going to myself so I can see this. And to name, which doesn't really matter because it's kind of whoever that's going to, it's going to. This is more for your reference, who you think it is. If we've got their name, we add it so we can see who we think it is. And then subject, this is sent from Fasetto Word. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's all the properties. So there's all the info we want to send. So now let's actually make use of that. So we know that's going to boil down to coming into here. So we can now get that. We can delete the constructor now we don't need it. So now let's just get their example code and chop in what we need. So we have a client, and we'll also comment this. So we'll get the SendGrid key, create a new SendGrid client, set the from details, and then we'll just go to here's this from email from names. That'll be details.from email, details from name, subject, and we'll do from to, makes more sense. Same again. Details.to email, details.to name. The subject is now details.subject. Plain text content we're not using, HTML content. Well, to be honest, content's just content now, and then we decide that afterwards. So that will be details.content. Create email class ready to send. So we've got the from, the to, the subject, plain text, and HTML content. So looks like you can send one or the other, but I guess it's which one if you put both in, it can't possibly work, because as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I'm sure you can't send a HTML email and a plain text email. You either send the email content is what it is. You can't tell the receiver what it's got. So I'm pretty sure this will work on if you send HTML content, that'll be sent. If you send plain text only, that'll be sent. But let's make that presumption and say that then if details.isHTML, then it's going to be null in this case. Otherwise, it's going to be the details content. And then for HTML, it's the opposite. So if details.isHTML, it's going to be the content. Otherwise, it's going to be null. So that will create the message ready to send. We can also break this down so it's easier to see. And we could also comment plain text HTML or content. And then the rest are obvious, from to subject. And then finally, send the email. And we get a response. Now, their documentation, unless I've overlooked something, doesn't mention anything about the response, doesn't do anything with it. So we can look into the documentation, but to be honest, I'll just send the email, see if it works, and see what the response is. And then return result based on response, and that we'll have to figure out after. So we should get into here, get all the info, get to the send, and then finally get to here. So let's spin up the application and take a look. So we've got into here now to send. We should have the details for the email, which is here. All that gets set up. The API keys pulled in successfully. To, from, subject, content, the message. Now the message is created. It's got contents, and it's text HTML. So maybe you can send an email with multiple parts of content. In fact, saying that out loud, I think you can. For now, we're quite happy sending HTML emails. It's, not many people can only receive plain text. I'm not really bothered about that. So from is correct. Personalizations, subject tos, and then it's to. So all the details look like they're in there. And now finally, we'll send the email. So F10 over that, and we await. So I presume now the site's kicking in, which is fine, because that's at the end. We've returned here. Well, the reason it's carried on is because we haven't bothered awaiting this call. So it's an awaitable, but we didn't bother awaiting. That's why the website just kicked in. Now we've got a response. So we hover over. We've got a body, which we haven't read from, so we should read that. Headers, we've got and then status code accepted. So I think that's a HTML status code. So by the looks of it, that should have worked, I guess. So let's just stop that now, check my emails out. So if I drag the emails up, you can see we've got the email. So there's a subject, which is right. This is where it's apparently come from, some guy at a secret@website.com. And there's the content, and then it's come to me. So that all looks like it's actually worked fine. So that's a good start. So now I guess we will move on to adding our actual content, the HTML content. Let's first go back to the site now we've done that. So I've integrated the code below. Next, to verify. Let's test your integration. Send an email to your application using the code you integrated. Click verify. And it worked. So view email activity. And it doesn't look like it's come through yet on here. But we're not bothered. It's come through, we know. This dashboard will update with emails sent, I'm pretty sure. So we want to really make use, and the reason I've picked SendGrid is that we can make use of templates. And that will allow us to put in our HTML template and put variables inside of it. So our email, if we pull it back up, we want to replace like the, we can make a generic one with a title, all content, and a button, which to be honest isn't a bad idea, which we'll probably do. So then this would be the variable, this would be the header, this would be the content, this would be the button text, and they'd have a button URL as well. So this can be a generic email template for us. So in order to do that, we'll go to Templates Transactional, and then go to Marketing Campaigns, try again, Template Transactional, there we go. And create your first template, click there, name, I guess we'll just call this General. Yeah, General. Template name, that's a search. So yeah, we'll call this one General, we'll save, I guess. Then we'll add a version. And code editor, because we've got the code to put in. Continue. Here's the code. So if we take our code from our email, copy all that and paste it in. In fact, we just replace everything. Yep, there we go. So that's definitely our code in there. And now we need to, I don't know, it's got kind of, oh yeah, it does got like a comparison here. So we want to replace this verify email with a variable. So this can be any, literally any piece of text you want. So let's just do, say, dash dash title dash dash. And then we'll replace these bits of string in the whole thing. So you just want this to be something unique that won't be anywhere else in your HTML template. So we'll do a title there, then the content. Now the only thing with the content is we've got to, really it's content 1, content 2, because we've kind of separated them with TDs. So this can be content 1, and this can be content 2. And there we can see how it looks. And then the verify email, I don't want clicking that to actually open the link. So here we go, this will be dash dash button text. And then the URL it goes to, this href here, will be dash dash button URL. So we have now, that's all we've really done, we've modified those few bits with variables. We'll just have to remember these variables, title, content 1, 2, button text, button URL. If we save that template now, unknown errors occurred, thank you very much. So select all, copy, refresh, and then see if it's magically lost it, because I've pasted it anyway. That's there, save, okay, that's worked fine now. So if we go back, we now have a template with a really bizarre name. Can we change that name? Yep, general, save. So we've got a general something with a I've just got the version name and the title the same, that's fine. So now all we need to do to send an email based on that template is to get this ID here. So copy this ID and close that bit now. And go back to our email. We're done with that bit as well now. Go back to our email send code, which is here. After we've created the message, which doesn't really contain anything, that's purely message details. Now the content itself is the interesting part here, really. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the content, to be honest, because the content's, I think that's where it's going to be body in the email, where it had that special body tag. I think that's where content's going to be. We don't really use contents here. So that's also going to beg a different question of it's a certain template that we've got, special variables to. We're going to have a list of, we're either going to have to make a specific detail per email or handle that in a special case that we know we want to use a certain, we're sending a very specific email, if you will. We're sending a verify email and we've got to construct that detail. And also to handle the template is sort of it's very specific to SendGrid. So making use of really the SendGrid template system in this fashion is not going to really be universal, because this is an email sender that just wants to send data. So what we want to do is bubble up above this level and construct something else that's more specific, that then ultimately this will just send details. We'll also have to, I guess, handle this sending of an email, because what we've got to do is add a template ID and add the variables into this, but we need to pass that in as well. So I guess we need to think of, if you wanted to send an email, some email details being sent could be, I guess, very specific to the email sender that's been implemented. So we could have just an object in this class that's, custom details that are specific to the sender that's being used. But then it kind of, again, you boil it down to being not generic. It wants to stay generic. So I'm almost tempted, the more I'm thinking this through, to keep this as a standard email sender, in the sense that it needs content from an email to be sent, and we handle the substitution ourselves, because that's all it's really doing, is taking our code and replacing almost a string replace value with those, and then we've got to keep track of this weird ID as well. So just to quickly show you how that would work anyway, and then we won't do it that way, is what you'd have here is you do message.template ID equals, then you paste in the ID, and then you just do message.add substitution. So it'd be add substitution, and this would be the title, and then the value would be verify email, and you'd do that for each one. So you'd have, content 1, content 2, button text, and button URL, and then that's it. You'd fill it with the right information and send, and the content would be tweaked to suit that. That's all you'd change. So if you ran this now, you'd get a template. So we can run a quick one and say like, hi guy, then this is the second line, and this is just below. Verify email is the button text, and we'll go to my website, say. And if we were to send this now, you should see the email we'll get will be including the template, but then what we'll do is just delete that. So there's the details we send. Presuming it's worked, we get accepted again, that's fine. And now we'll check the email. So you can see there, now we've got verify email, hi guy, first, second line, verify, and the link. So that's working fine. And that's making use of the template. But as I mentioned, this isn't really, if we now want to change this out and not use SendGrid, we're relying on SendGrid for something. We're adding a dependency that's a bit more than I like. We don't need to make use of that template thing. So we'll delete that, save that, go back to SendGrid. Let's just delete that. Confirm, delete this. done. So now we'll do it our way. We're doing exactly the same thing, but we'll do it without the requirement of using SendGrid's templating system. So all we need to do is pass in the final content as HTML. So this is really done. This SendGrid email sender is done. Its job is done. It sends an email. The only thing we've got to do is handle if it succeeded or not and where the error messages are. So we will get first the body result equals the response.body.readerString. That will simply get us the body to look at. And we will have the response is status code, rather, is HTTP status code. So yeah, that is there. And we got accepted, which is a 202. So it looks like 202 is if it's succeeded. Let's force it to fail to see what happens. Let's just put, say, an email that doesn't exist. And let's see what happens to the response at that point. So this opens up, tries to send, I presume. Oops, I didn't breakpoint. So we've totally flown through and missed everything. So let's try that again. So it opens up, gets to here. So the response this time is bad request. The body result is is that we haven't awaited the async. Let's try it once more. We have to await the result because that's a task. So we know bad request happens when it's failed. So basically anything other than 202 we can presume as a failure. You could also read the documentation. I'm just being a bit lazy here, figuring it out myself. So now the body request is JSON, obviously here. So it's a class that contains an array called errors, and in the array it's got a message and a field and a help link. So we could construct, and we will construct, let's just copy that error, open up Notepad, and just paste that in a minute. So we will create in here a new class called SendGrid response, I guess. And this is a response to a SendGrid send message call. So we know it contains a list of errors, which is also another class. So let's just make another class, which will be SendGrid response error. And that will be an error response for a SendGrid response. And in here then, so for each item, or to start with, this is now can be public list of SendGrid response error. It's got to be called errors. Any errors from a response. You can do an array. I just like using lists. So we've got errors. That's the only thing in there. There's a bunch of errors. That class is done. Inside the errors, we have a message, which is a string, a field, which is a string, and a help, which is an URL as a string. So we've basically got three strings called message, field, and help. So we do public string message, the error message, public string field, the field inside the email message details that the error is related to. And we've got help, which looks like an URL, and I'm presuming that's always going to be the case. So useful information for resolving the error. So this looks like this would be more developer help, because you're not going to tell that to the end user. That wouldn't make any sense to them. That's for us, help for us. This at the same time is also practically useless to the end user. But this message kind of helps a little bit. So all we'll do is output that message detail. So what we should be able to do is say, firstly, if we succeeded, so if response dot status code is accepted, then return new response, so return successful. Because that's all you do, you return when there's no other content. Otherwise, it's failed. So this would be, otherwise it failed. So we get the result from the body, deserialize the response. We should also at this point try and catch here, I guess. And if we failed, then or if something unexpected happened, return failure. That would be return new email response with an error message of unknown error occurred. And to do localization, we still need to do if debugger dot is attached, debug dot break. And all this will do is if we are debugging, it'll break into here so we can see this, and we can get rid of that warning, which that is not a fix we want. We want to ignore that warning, which is, well, for now, let's just chuck it inside a local variable so it doesn't complain. And it's going to complain about that anyway, I believe. No, that's fine. So we break if we're in debug mode. So break if we are debugging. Just helps us for quicker catching if there's an error, if we forgot to throw on all exceptions. Deserialize is a valid word for us, at least, that I'm bothered about. So let's just add that to the ignored words. Deserialize. If there's an unexpected error, we return that. We should never get to here. Well, yeah, we should never get to there. So that shouldn't throw now. So we get deserialize the response, var SendGrid response equals JSON convert dot deserialize object of type SendGrid response, and it's the body response. So what we should get from that now is a nice bunch of error messages that we can provide. So to be honest, what I think we should actually do as well is this should be a list of errors, because there might well be a bunch, it's not necessarily one error. So this can just be errors. And that is also, I guess, errors dot count. We want this to not be null, but also not be empty. So it's successful if the count is... I'm just trying to think the logic back to front here. I'm not sure if we do a nullable, because if it's null, it's going to return here. So we want an inverted logic, basically, to be assured of this logic. So if the count, if not the errors, so if that's false, so if that's null, it'll return false, which will then return true because we invert it. Otherwise, if the count is greater than 0, then it's true, we invert it. What I want to do, to be honest, we can test this out, say we're doing that way. If we did errors count as less than or equal to 0, my concern here is the nullable. Whether this nullable, if it's null, is going to return successful as false, because if it's null, it's going to return false. So let's just double check that logic by making a new class first. Let's just start up here, var a equals, just prove out my logic, new SendGrid a dot errors equals new. So we'll start at this point and we'll go after and we'll check when it's null. This is going to complain, isn't it, in a minute? Just return a new one there for the minute. Still going to complain. What are you complaining about? Errors equals new, list of errors. New array with one error. And to be honest, we could do that simpler if we wanted, but that's fine for now. Is that really going to just complain that it's actually going to throw? I thought I'd only got that on a warning. No, I must have it on an error to do that. That's going to throw me off. Okay, we'll just have to comment that out for now and check once, then check again after. So with a new response, oh, come on, it's getting a bit annoying now. With a new send email response with null, successful should be true. So see, there's the issue. Successful is false because they're nullable. So we can't use that simple logic, so because if it's null. So we're going to have to invert it and say if it's greater than 0. And then that way, if that's false, then the logic should now flip back to front whether it's null or not. So this time now successful should be true, which it is. And then we should also be able to create a new list of errors, and it should still be successful because it's an empty list of errors. And then finally we can add. So you see it's still successful. And finally we now add to a bunch of errors, or rather even just one will do, and it can be an empty string as well. This should now say false. So the logic's set up correctly at that point. So that's one thing you have to be careful of. And there you go, successful is false. You just have to be careful of with nullable statements that look fairly straightforward, like, you know, at a glance, checking if, the count equals 0. That you've got to realize what happens here. This gets replaced and says if errors is null, then you return false at this point, which means successful is false, based on it being null. But then if it returns that the list's empty, it'll return true. So you have to just really understand, what the logic is. So the way around that is to invert the nullable so that it always matches. So we're saying this is checking if there is an error, so that when this is true, there is an error. So if it's null, it was returning false, which means there isn't an error. And if the count's 0 or less, or which can't be less, but if the count's 0, it's also false, which means it's an error, and then you invert the final result. So hopefully that makes sense. It's a simple thing. I'm just probably not explaining it very well. So that's just a simple check for successful. So we get there, we fail, we deserialize the response, and now we can add any errors to the response. So that would be var error response, or we can just return. Well, in fact, what we want to do is say this did fail. We know it's failed because it's not successful there, but there's no errors. Then we'd want to make sure there is an error. Otherwise, we'll say it's successful with no errors. So we'll say var error response equals new send email response. And we'll say the errors equals SendGrid response question mark dot errors dot select and we just want the message from them to a list. So that will get the errors. Make sure we have at least one error. So we'd then say error response, if error response.errors ?count, or error response.errors .count equals 0, then add an unknown error. So we'll then just add error response.errors equals new, just in case it's null. And in here, we'll do unknown error from SendGrid. And it's, again, that might not be the message you want to send to the end user, but for now that's fine for us. Or in fact, unknown error from email sending service. Please contact Fasetto support. And that will be enough. And then localization is needed here again. So that will make sure that if it's not a status code accepted, we know it's failed. We deserialize the response, and if it crashes doing that, we return that there's an unknown error occurred. Otherwise, if we do get the response, we extract the errors from it, and we dump them into the errors. We then double check we have some errors, and finally now we return the object, which we know for a fact will contain errors if it's failed. So we should fail. So let's step this whole logic through to here where it fails and run this again. And now we should end up with a response from our call that actually does say whether it's successful or not. And it contains the response back from SendGrid with the correct info. So the response should be that bad request, which it is. So that fails as check. So then we get the body result. We deserialize, which has worked. We've got an errors count in there with all the details. So this will now form a response in our format that says it's failed with the message does not contain a valid address. So it's a good enough error message because we're getting it directly from SendGrid. We could handle them all specifically ourselves, but for now, that's a good enough response that we handle whether it failed or not. So this call really, I feel handles the SendGrid API, well enough that we can send an email, and if it succeeds, we return it's successful. Otherwise, we return the errors. So the thing we want to bake on top of that now is another service that we inject that's specific for sending, very specific emails, things that are custom to our Fasetto Word application. One of them's like, send a general email, and that's very specific to our application. The general email will include a header, 2 pieces of content, a button, so there's multiple types of emails. And we want to wrap that, pull it in from a templating location, and go from there. So for that, we'll make another interface and we'll call it the email template sender. And that's in core. And this is a public interface. Sends emails using the email sender and creating the HTML email from specific templates. And because these templates are all going to be, like I say, very specific to our application, the calls inside here will be very specific. So this would be, say, send general email. And this would have the send email details, and we'd also then have to have the custom specific info. So the one thing in here that would be slightly different is we wouldn't expect them to pass content because we're going to replace the content. So it's kind of a piece of information they need to be aware of. Other than that, we'll have the title, content 1, content 2, button text, and button URL. And this would say sends an email with the given details using the general template. And then we could have a template provider that then we inject and add, set templates that we can then read from a file system or wherever else we want. But for now, I'll probably just skip over that and we'll add a file system afterwards. So the email message details. And then we should also mention, note the content property is ignored and replaced with the template. So the title of the email, the title, because it's not of the email, it's the content. The first line contents, the second line contents, the button text, and finally the button URL. So now we can implement this service and inject this service the same. So jump back to startup. We have SendGrid extensions. So we're going to have, this time, we should make a subfolder in here called SendGrid. Chuck them in. And we'll now make an templates. And this is, what are we calling this? Template sender. So this will just be, I prefer the word templates actually. Add a class, and just call this email template sender, just our generic standard one, which can just live here for now. This will implement the email template sender. Handles sending templated emails. Templated, I feel, is a word that we should now add to our language. So there we go, it's now in. And finally, the send email. So for this, and again, to break this video up into sectional, or rather to break the series of these videos up slightly, what we'll do after is add a local flat data content provider. So basically something that can provide files off the local system. So kind of a data storage for the server, but in terms of, directly on the file system, not in a database. And then that's where we can store the templates. So instead of doing that, we'll directly just potentially just read from a folder for now. Like include it here and then copy it over and just read for now, just to keep it simple. So that's what we'll do. We can add it to the www root folder, so it's a file, but we'll sort that out in a minute. We'll just read straight from a file for the minute. So this should also be called async because it's asynchronous, and that's not renamed when I've done that for some reason. That will be async. What's it complaining about now? Method must have return type. Oh yeah, of course. We should actually, don't know why it's saying we need one, but this isn't saying we need one, but we do actually need one. It'll be the send email response. And, oops. There we go. So now it's a response. Now it'll say not all code paths return a value, correct. So this will be, all we need to do is read the general template from file, and then that'll be a to-do, replace with IOC flat data provider. So what we're going to do, I think if we just add to here for now, add existing item, and we don't have that file in there just yet, so let's chuck that file in. So if I just go into email templates, paste it in, it's already going to be included actually, so we'll call this general template. Cancel that, just open up general template. This is just the compiled one that we saw. Title we'll just remove actually, notice that in there. Then style we no longer need in there, that's just going to be added for no reason because they're all inlined. Then we need to now replace the verify email header again here. So we did -- title Then this would be --content1. This will be --content2. And then we've got --button URL. And finally, here, --button text. So we've got that. We have this here. I'm not sure what we'll do with the build action here. So I could read an embedded resource, or we could do content. So let's just make this embedded for now. Like I said, this is definitely a temporary solution. So we've got embedded general template, but how do we read this again? I haven't done this in a while. So we need to read the stream. So we'll have a reader as a new stream reader. And the resource stream, that is assembly dot get entry assembly. So that will be, you know, this assembly, the server's assembly. That's fine. Then I think it's get manifest. I haven't done this in a long while. Get manifest resource stream. The name is the name of the project, so it's this dot, and then the folder we're in, email, and then a subfolder dot templates dot general template dot htm. So that looks nice and nasty. It's a good job it's temporary. UTF-8 is the encoding. Coding .utf-8. Not going to be happy with that. Okay, so that nasty mess should read us from the entry assembly, which is in this one, the thing that started it, hopefully. And then get the manifest resource stream, and that just means look for an embedded resource, which we just set that to. And you do the project name first, which is this, and then each folder separated by a dot, which it does, and then the name of the file. So hopefully this would read us the contents. So var template, or rather what we should have here is var template text equals default string, and then set it here, template text equals reader.read to end, and it should be all strings. We can make use of the async one. Read file contents. Let's just return for now a new response just to test it works this far. And then we'll go from there once we've got the contents. So let's just now add email template sender. We want extension methods for as well. So we want email template sender extensions. And we can do pretty much a copy of this extension. So extensions for any send email template sender classes, and then we'll just copy this in to here. Injects the email template sender into the services to handle the email template sender. That would need then, I guess, using Fasetto.word.core to show that. There we go. We also need the dependency injection, and now this will be add email template sender. And the reason we're doing all this work is to, as I mentioned, keep the responsibility of each little module, each little interface very specific. So we have now an email sender that we can replace to send via SendGrid or send via a different mechanism. And we can also send templated emails without relying on the underlying email sender. So now this can be replaced, the place we read emails from, construct them into piece of info to send and pass it down. So there's a a good reason for all of this. That class needs to be static. So that now adds the email template sender. So now if we go finally to the startup, go up to into the configure, add SendGrid sender, add general email template sender, services.add email template sender. So now that's a service available just like the other one. And instead of calling now like this, if we cut this or we copy this, and then here we change this to email template sender, and now do send general email. Oh, in fact, I should have left that in there. Should have just pasted that. Delete that. Now the first bit we do is send the same info, and now we can add the specifics. So the title now is going to be verify email. This will be hi, and then we'll just put loop for now to match the original one. That content is going to be, we'll find out. We'll just match the thing so we know the template's working basically. So this will be this in here. And that would be a HTML break at that point. So then we'd have the verify email, content 1, content 2, and obviously this would be pulled in from wherever we want and put in the right place. Verify email, and then finally the URL, which will generate afterwards. So this should now say send it via a template. We should have all the info passed in just the same. So now the template sender, all it's got to do is read the template. To be honest, we might as well finish the call at that point. So we read the templated text, replace special values with those inside the template. So this would be template text equals template text.replace, and we'd have title, and you can see where I'm going with this. In fact, you could chain them. So this would be dot replace, content 1, oops, 100%, content 2, button text, button URL. And you can see all we've done there is done the job of what SendGrid was doing for us. So now we end up with the same template with all the injected info. And finally, we just have to send the message. So now we return the awaited IOC container dot. And again, you wouldn't do provider dot get service as we're doing now. Instead, what we'll do is we'd add it to here. So we have, as we've got here, scoped instance, the transient instance of the email sender, and that is using Fasetto Word core, and this would be email sender, email sender, and we get the service email sender. Oops, have I spelled transient wrong? Oh yeah, no C in it. And then copy and paste that and call it email template sender. And there we go. So now we have shortcuts to it to say ioc.emailSender.send email async. And we just pass in the details. Oh, one last step. Set the details content to this template content. So now the details.content gets overridden with the templated text. Send email. And then finally, we can now go back to here, and this can be replaced with ioc.email template sender. send general email. So finally, all this should boil down to being injected and calling to here, and then we should read that temporary HTML till we store that somewhere else, get the template, replace it with the content, and send off an email, hopefully. Oh, that actually worked. I didn't expect that to work. So there we go, templated text we've read from the embedded resource now, which has got in there. We have our special tags, which are like there, that should get replaced. So if we then go over, replace them, check out the content once more, we should now have, in the header, we've now got the content, then we've got hi Luke, and then the details. So this should now be ready to send. That should all send and hopefully work. Oh, we've forgot that right now we've got the wrong email in. That doesn't exist. Thought it happened quick. So let's try that once more. Did I forget a breakpoint? I've removed the breakpoint. Well, it's gone anyway. Forget the breakpoint. I removed it. Let's check the emails. So there looks like the email. And something messed up because that's not quite the same, which is interesting. In fact, yeah, something's definitely... I wonder if it's because I've removed the styles and the styles are actually helping out. So even though we've embedded the styles, we did tweak the... we did tweak the email content. Let's just tweak that back and re-include the styles. But the important part is we've got the verify email, the name, the info, the link. It's all actually worked. So let's just delete those off so we don't get confused. And close that down. Open that back up. Just go back to email template and copy the style back in, because that's the only thing I removed. I'm wondering whether that's impacted the email. So I did technically tweak the email. So now it's back to what it was, exactly the same. And if that doesn't work, then potentially the format's not UTF-8, what it's saved in. Run that once more. That opens up, so that should be done. So let's check the emails again. And there's now the email. So yes, that leaving the style in there did actually seem to help out. So we'll leave that email as was. But now what we have is a full templated email that we can change and put content in. So let's delete that one. And the last step now to this whole setup, and this has been set up correctly now. So we've done it in a very modular way and using dependency injection so that all these little things are individual and can be replaced. So like now the templating system can then rely on here reading from our flat data provider, which is where the templates can get stored afterwards. And also the sender is called directly and that can get replaced. So we can replace individual blocks of our program code, and that's kind of one of the benefits of dependency injection. And we've put all the to-dos where we need to replace things. So now this will get as a template, it'll get sent. We've got all the dependency injection done, got the error handling done. So the last part is to really cut this out here and go to the API controller, finally here where we wanted to send the verification code. So email the user the verification code. So here we probably just want to make a helper function that sends the verification code to the user, as opposed to general email. So we've got the SendGrid, we've got the templates, then we probably want one specific to, this web server. So this is now going to say, send verification email and pass in just user details. So we'll call this the Fasetto email sender. And this isn't going to be injected because this is literally specific to this web server itself. It doesn't go outside of this web server. So handles sending email specific to the Fasetto Word server. And now all this will have to do is public. You can get a response, I guess, just in case you want to use it with it, so you can do a task. But to be honest, it'll be self-contained really. It's just that, the job of this is to send the email. It's kind of a true or false, and if it fails, it should also be responsible for setting some properties in the database to let the user know through when it asks for information, it knows something's gone wrong. But that's again further down the line. So for now, we'll just reply with the email. Can't think what it's called. Using fasetto.word.core. Oops. And email. Send email response. That's it. This will then say send user email verification, or send user verification email. I don't really know what to call it. It's really a email verification email, but that just doesn't look right. Send user verification email. So I think that's what we'll do. The details we'll need about the user, we can either just pass in directly as strings, or we can pass in an identity. But to be honest, we can keep it as simple as, because you don't know where the data is going to come from, we'll say username, or rather first name of the user, or display name of the user. So if hi somebody, and if it's null, we can substitute that. Then we'll have the just paste this in before my thingy gets overridden. Await that. What do we need? We need display name, content. That is no longer needed there. Is HTML as true? From would be our email, which again can come from settings somewhere. So for now we have no real settings like general settings. We'll chuck it in the configuration here. So this will be, I don't know, Fasetto settings, say. And in here we can have email from. Send email from email. And that will be, let's call it no reply at fasetto.com. And the send email from name is Fasetto Word. Then we can get that from email using the IOC container dot configuration is just set directly. So we'll get the configuration there, and it will be the, if I remember rightly, I think you just use a colon to just jump inside nice and quickly without having to do anything more complicated. So I think that's it. That'll get the from details. And then the to would be the user's email. So that's one thing we need. So that would be string email. So that can be replaced. Display name. Subject, we don't need to pass in because that's under our control. So that can come from settings again. Just somewhere to store it for now until we, decide on the best place to put these. So send email. This will be send email verification. Send email verification subject. Or to be honest, this is sending the verification, so we can just put that straight in here for now, because this single call is the one that's going to send the verification email. So this can put Fasetto Word verify your email, or do it the other way around so it shows at the start. And then the top bit is verify email. Then it's hi, and then display name. Oh, wrong one. Hi, display name. Thanks for creating an account with those two. Can you please verify email, and then finally this needs to come in from here, which will be string verification URL. verification error. And that will come from each, the specific request to send a verification. And that we can just return for now. And that is going to complain that it wants to end in the word async. Still going to complain. Cannot declare an instance member in a static class. Okay, static itself. There we go. Fasetto is apparently not in the words, really. Oh yeah, we've never even added Fasetto to the dictionary. Right, so now we have sends a verification email to the user to the specified user. So the user's display typically first name. And then also what we'll do for the display name is if the display name is null, so we don't know it, then we'll say instead stranger. So we'll say hey stranger, as opposed to just hey and then blank. So we'll always have something there, because we don't have their first name right now. We don't ask them on sign up to enter the first name. The user's email to be verified. The URL to send the verification email, or rather the URL the user needs to click to verify their email. So now we can just call this static class to send this, and that'll wrap all this in a little helper. We've set up the settings here to tweak the pieces of info specific to the email sender, so that's customizable. We could also remove that from the content being passed into send email and have that baked inside, but to be honest, it gives us that flexibility to change that anywhere. We could also default it. If you don't provide it, it defaults to these, so we don't have to specify, but again, as it grows, we'll figure that out. So now, if we then step back to where we were, all we have to do here is say Fasetto email sender.send user verification email. We don't want to await it because we don't want to hold the user up while we're sending an email. So we'll ignore this. But in order to ignore a task correctly, really you want to await the result to catch any errors, that throw. Otherwise, you don't know what to do with the errors. But we'll sort that in a minute. Display name of the user we don't have, so that'll just be null right now. The user's email, we have user identity dot, and in fact you could change this from hey stranger to hey and then the username actually. But we'll try it with null first to check that works, then we'll swap it with the user's username. So we'll do an email, and then the verification URL is the email verification code. So we don't want to generate confirmation token. We want to generate email. Well, we want to generate the URL, not just the token. Generates an email confirmation token. So now we want the actual URL. Oh, and of course we've got to do that part of it. So once we've got that, we also need to handle the URL coming back in to validate the email. That's another call we need to make. So let's just, that won't take long. Just make a public async task. Well, to be honest, it's going to be a view action result, and we'll make this view in another video. We don't need to make the view for this one. Task of, in fact, we don't even need to be a task. Action results, verify email. And that will be, for now, root, because we need to put these in their own little maps. API, verify email. And we can do ID. And then string ID, so that will get passed in. Verify if the ID matches. Yeah. We need to pass in the user ID as well first, actually. So that's user ID and then email token, I guess. So this would be user ID email token. So first, get the user. So await, in fact, this doesn't need to be async. That will now be verify email async. Got the user manager dot find by ID, user ID. So var user equals, if the user is null, then we need to return, and this is a visual, when they click this URL, this is a visual one to tell them to, in a page that we haven't designed yet. So for now, we're just going to return bog standard plain text. We haven't done the UI front end, and we don't really care right now for that. So if it fails, we'll literally return content, and we'll just say user not found. And then obviously we'll replace that with proper UI. So to do nice UI. If we have the user, now we want to verify the email token. And that's the same thing again. Verify user token, is it? No, it's not verify user token. Confirm, that's like confirm email. So confirm email async, await, and it wants the user, which we now have, and the token, which is email token. And what's it return? It returns, don't know. It's returning an identity result, which is succeeded or not. So if succeeded, so if result.succeeded, return content, email verified, and then otherwise invalid token. And a sad face. And then the same again, some nice UI on the returns. So that's as simple as it is to verify. This should now verify an email. So we need to point them to this API route for now. And again, we wouldn't copy and paste this. Once we put these into an API routes class that contains all the routes, we can make use of that exact route. But for now, we'll just use that. So we have the confirmation token, confirmation URL equals, and then this would be the URL to the whole website for now. To do replace with API routes that will contain the host, contain the static routes to use. So that's got to be a to do. Until then, we need to include the host that we're running on, /API /email /user identity.id / the email verification token. And that would be the URL. And to get that, we can use, as in to get the URL we're currently running on, it will be request dot. In fact, we're probably best breakpointing and taking a look at that so we know. So let's just put a breakpoint, let's comment that out. In fact, yeah, comment that bit out. That's fine. Come back to that bit and let's hit up, just say the home page a minute to find out what we need. So go controllers home, the index, and var a equals request, and let's just inspect the request, because what we want to do is get the local host colon and then port name, which will effectively change whenever the pages change, but we want the actual thing there. Send, really? Could not parse the JSON file. Oh, I've messed up the JSON file. 1 second. Forgot a semicolon, forgot a colon there. Let's try that again. So we hit there, we get a home page, so now request. Let's just do a quick watch on this. So the request dot host dot value looks like what we need. So request dot host dot value. is what we'll use for the URL. And again, that'll boil down to being inside of a specific, well, to be honest, that's actually fine all the time for where we are. So in here, we can now do request.host.value, and then the full URL. So that'll be the confirmation URL. That can be passed in, and that can now be the full URL. And this I mentioned, we're not awaiting, so we don't have a result. So what you want to do is do a task.run and await it inside here. And it's going to complain about that as well, because we're not awaiting. I'm not sure how we get around this warning as such. We'll make a helper function to run and log the error, which I don't think we've got already. So task.run, it's going to be a hell of a lot. I'm just wondering whether I already made a helper. Task manager. So in fact, this already runs and logs, but do we have kind of a run and forget? No, and we're not even making use of this task manager.run either, which automatically logs any errors and throws them back up. But okay, for now, let's do, it's a rare case where you want to run them and not await them. And to be honest, we might as well await for how long it takes, so screw it, let's just await it for now. Saves any other hassle and recatching errors and things, so let's just await the verification email being sent. So like I said, I can't see it taking that long. So it's finally breakpoint here, run, and we will register for an account. So I think we've already got an account, but let's just make a new one up. How did we register now? I can't remember if we made any UI or if we hit it up, or did we run it through? We ran it through Fasetto Word, didn't we? So we'll have to spin up Fasetto Word. So if we run Fasetto Word now, and where did we even put the calls? So we go to the view models, application, register, and we just manually type them in for now. So we run this while we're running the server, which is running at the minute. We should get into a register call here. So let's go back to Fasetto Word. This has got errors now. Got to upgrade the modules. So same as before, right click on solution, manage NuGet packages for solution. Select all and update. Just keep everything up to date. And this is the one that will probably fail on DNA framework. Just got to do one file rename for the change in names. We go to app.xaml.cs, I believe, and use, I believe, is changed to add now. And then we should control R and rename ours to add. Just keeping more in line with the way the ASP.NET Core does the same thing. So now it's building, it runs. We'll probably have to log out, which doesn't log out right now, and we want to register free account. So username, test, email, contact@angel6.com, and just a temporary password, and register. This hits here. It's going to go through the normal steps. I think we might find we already have a user with that name. So it's probably going to fail. Yep, false. So then it's going to complain that we already have a user. So let me just wipe the database a minute. So just go to databases, Fasetto Word client. That's our settings. In fact, we'll just wipe both. So just wipe Fasetto Word and wipe Fasetto Word client. And then we'll have no data whatsoever. Then we better restart both things. So restart the server, which will now have no user database. So we should be fine creating a new user. And restart this. And I think we should end up back at the login page because we've never logged in. because I've just wiped the database that contained the login, or not. Or is this just temporary? Where did we store that? Where did we store the login credentials? Once we logged in. It's been a while. We logged in, handle successful login, client data store, save login credentials. So yeah, how's that even taken us to a login page when we have no database? Anyway, let's ignore that for the minute. It's not important. Go back to here, create Angel6, contact at angel6.com and log in. Now we hit here, we should create the user fine because it doesn't exist. So that should now say successful. There we go. We get the user identity, which is that. We get the email verification code generated, which we haven't awaited typically. Let's start that again. And let's just delete the database again because now we've got a user in there. And I think start that back up. I think the Fasetto Word application must have, we must just go to that page by default, if I remember rightly, because the application view model, which stores this current page, now should begin to log in. So it's actually interesting that we are, oh sorry, no, ignore me, we're not using that, are we? We're using a local DB that's stored in the app data. That's why. Let me just delete. So let's just delete the fasetto.db and run that again. And then now we should get to the login screen. And we've got a fresh database for the server. So we finally create an account, sign in, or rather create it first, send that off. The server should pick it up. We get to here. We now have a verification code, which is massive. Generates an URL, which is going to be huge, but who cares? So there's our verification URL. So it's got the server /API/verify/email, which is the URL it hits first. Then the next there is the user's ID, and the next there is the token. That should now get sent. So after we hit this line, everything else is normal. That should pass over. I presume it succeeded. We didn't bother getting the result. I should get an email in a minute. That's the account registered. Then we're now logged in. We've got settings, which are all here. We should show in the settings whether the email is verified. It should be like, I guess, green or red or something saying that it's verified or not, just a tick. But that should be sent off now. So let's just check the emails. So you can see we've not actually got the email. So we've got verify email, hi stranger, which is what we said we wanted to use at first, and we'll change that to the user's name. Please verify. And finally, this is an actual link that we can click now. So if we were to go to the server, we know that now works. And we should also add the ability for resending of that URL. But for now, that now actually works and sends. We now want to get to the verify email URL here, which we should hit when we click this link now in the email. So we go to the email, get some spam, and click verify email. It'll open up a web page. So of course I need to open it in a store. Really, I need to open a local URL. Oh, we've missed HTTP off. So let's delete that. Do it once more. If I'll just pause, delete, and resend that email with the HTTP appended. So I'll just add to here because it doesn't include the protocol. HTTP. Run that up again. I'll delete the database and do it all again. And now we have the email again, this time with the HTTP. We click that, opens up the URL, and I'm hoping we've hit the breakpoint. No, we haven't. User ID, email, token. So we should have hit this URL. Instead, what are we getting? Just a 404. Yeah, 404. So API verify email. Is it just expecting a post all the time? As opposed to get, we've got to explicitly tell it it's a get. Let's now close that, do HTTP get, run that up again. We don't need to resend the email now because we know we've got it. So we know that the button link works and we know where it's trying to go to. So now we're just resolving that. So we click that, still getting 404. Is it something to do with not encoding the URL? AB, yes, it's something to do with the URL encoding. So what do we have? We need to safely encode that's why, because the details also contains a /. So the user ID, we basically need to URL encode and then URL decode this piece of information to make that work. So we will need to, and this is now we'll have to resend the email, but I can generate that and pause and redo. So what we'll need to do here is, I think it's an HTTP utility .URL, yeah, URL encode. So it passes in, oh, there we go, string. So we chuck in a string and we URL encode it, and this basically means that anything in the URL is safe to go into an actual web address. So anything like a / will get replaced. I think it's just a base 64 encoding. And then we'll do the same for the email verification code, just to encode both parts. So now that should definitely get through. So if I just pause and resend and delete the database and get a new email spinning up. And now we have another email, and this time the URL will be slightly different. Doesn't actually look any different, but let's just click it and see. There we go, so it is different. So now we've actually hit here. So we went backwards. Yeah, you can see the details has totally changed. And the plus there has changed to a %2b. So that's correctly now encoded. So now we've got the user ID, which has come back and we haven't URL decoded it yet. So we have the details that's been URL, in fact it has URL decoded by default, I believe. We'll soon find out. So now, do we get the user? Yep, we do. So it's already URL decoded for us on this side. We don't need to touch anything. So we've got the user and we've got the token. So let's see if we get a successful verification. And it failed, invalid token. So why is the token invalid? Maybe it is the URL decode on this. So it doesn't actually like URL decoding on that. So we should see the, it's different each time. What we should do is URL encode and decode a minute to see the difference. This is fun. We can also just do quickly, just to see, equals HTTP utility.URL decode and pass in the token. And let's see if that works, just out of curiosity, to see if it's just not decoded. But I feel like it has decoded. So we just click the email again, just to get that back up. And we originally have CF plus %2. So that's now changed with a space instead of a plus. So I've got a feeling that's also screwed up the token. Yes, that's failed. So let's just pause this a minute and resend the URL token. I've got a feeling the URL decodes method. In fact, let me just go to the home page first. Let's figure this one out. And on the index, let's just say get my user. Can we do a first? No, find by name. So I presume I can just do Angel6. Async task and index async for now. Then we await and just do user dot muser.generate email confirmation token user for token equals. And now let's just mess with the token. Var encoded equals HTTP utility. Utility dot URL encode, and just pass in the token and do decoded equals URL decode, and this will be the encoded. Var output equals, then we'll just combine the two just to visually see what's going on in like a nice easy output. So this will be system.environment.newline and put decoded. And I could do a comparison, but I want to see if they are matching in the first place, what's going on. So if we now just spin up this and see, we'll see the original token, the encoded and the decoded, and in fact that was the wrong way around anyway. I just realized I output the token, and that's also not working because of the index. Index there, and let's screw this because that's complaining for now. Just do task.run, chuck this inside of a task, and it should be token and decoded, and we'll see the difference. In fact, let's do token encoded, token decoded, and then just chuck the encoded at the end for this. Well, no, they don't need to see the end. So what's this moaning about now? Index. There we go. So let's hit this up, hit the home page, and let's take a look at, we missed the breakpoint, which is already going to have run by now, I would have thought. There we go. So the output now is, if we can get it on one big line. To me, that looks the same. So we don't word wrap. That is now successfully encoded and decoded. So we know what we're looking for. So this time, if we pause, keep a log of what's been sent, and then confirm and find out what's messing up, basically. So I will now get the register. What we'll do is take the register call. It typically does the register. And instead of keep deleting the database, let's just chuck in this little bit here. So we can just keep rerunning this. So we get the user, then we generate the token, generate the URL, and we then send the email. So we can pause here, keep a log of the actual email that was sent, see what email we get, and see what we get back in, and see what part's breaking here, what's sending the wrong info, because something is. So the email verification token that we want is this. And now let's see what we get. So that will now send away, and we'll get an email. Click the new email, and let's see what we get. Firstly, let's get this bit, which should be the encoded part, or rather the part that's still URL encoded. And I've got a feeling it's removing the pluses altogether, which I think actually I've come across this issue before, which is quite annoying actually. I do think this is a fairly common issue. And then if we go to now the email bit here, I'm pretty sure when it comes in, let's see what we get. This is the not messed with one. In fact, that actually looks valid now. So it has URL decoded. So you can see now it's URL decoded, but you can see it's actually partly not done it right. So there's actually %2f there, which should be /, which is a an Earl decode thing. So if we replace the /, I'm wondering whether it's just /s are messing up, which is interesting because I guess it thinks it's part of an Earl. It's the way it's coming in. So yeah, it's the / in the token that are getting messed up, which kind of makes sense in a way. So I think one fix might be to, if we put a star, I think is the key at the end of this, that simply means, I think it's a star there. It might be a star there. I forget. Let's try a star there first. And that just means nothing else can come after that point. I'm wondering then whether the Earl decode will work correctly then. So that's not a valid Earl, so it must be the star outside. Because I don't want to have to hackishly fix an email Earl token from having /s. So I'm hoping this way makes it work. Now we're going to have to click the email link again. And hopefully, fingers crossed, actually nothing's come in this time. So it's, that's now stopped working. So this is still not got the right Earl. So I did a quick Google, and turns out this is a common issue that I thought I'd seen, that's ongoing and still open. So here's the issue that I'm going to link to code. This is all talking about the exact issue. That basically Earl encoding and decoding is leaving the /. So unfortunately, it looks like it's a known issue. So what we'll do to fix that is, it's already decoded, so we don't need that bit. We'll put a note, issue at the minute with Earl decoding that contains /s does not replace them. Paste that in. And then for now, manually fix that. So the email token, and this is it's rare you ever have to fix anything with .NET. It's usually very, very bug free, but this is an outstanding issue at the minute. So what we'll do instead is just replace percentage 2f with /, and also just in case anything changes and they tweak anything between now and then, we'll do the uppercase 2f as well, and replace that with /. So now that should fix the token, and we should end up with the same token. We don't need the star anymore, and we should now get hopefully a valid email verification after all that. So now if we hit this exact same link up that was emailed to us, we get hit into here. The token now should have been replaced, and you can now see there's a / where it should be. So just to double check this, the old one, the original is at the top, which, what's going on here? Oh. Well, anyway, ignore that now. I've lost that note file. So we get the user, we try to verify based on that token, and finally it succeeded. So unfortunately that was a little bit slow thanks to a little bug in the .NET Core side of things. But now that will spin up and verify an email. So now the last step to, I guess, confirm that is if we were to open the database and look at the user, we should now have a verified email. So if we go to database, Fasetto, tables, ASP.NET users, do a new query, select all from ASP.NET users. You can see now email confirmed here. So we've now finally confirmed the email. So that seemed a bit long-winded near the end, but we got there. So what we have now is when the, and let's just remove from here the temporary code to make sure I don't accidentally commit that. We have a system whereby we've added a new route where you can verify the email, which is simply an URL that gets the user ID and the email token passed as an email so that the user can just click a link. We verify that and just simply say confirm that token's valid, and if so, that's it, job done, it's all done. And then inside of the register function, we just made all the helpers around sending an email and using the token, the template we made and made it all modular in the correct way so that we can have, you know, a static send verification email, which makes use of an email template sender, which makes use of an email sender. So it's all nice and easy to expand upon. So now when we come to make new emails, they'll be much, much, much quicker. We've now got a simple way and a simple mechanism to send and receive emails. I will replace the SendGrid one with a direct SMTP for those that want to simply use their own email address to send emails and just enter their username and password. So it's kind of a free way without having to, you know, pay for anything at all. You can still use the SendGrid one for free for up to 100 a month, so it's kind of in there. And then obviously I'll just put in here, so I don't forget again, replace with your SendGrid key. And then we just won't commit that in to the database. So hopefully this was useful. Again, anyone wanting to support what I do can support me at patreon.com/angel6. Any questions or comments on the video, let me know, and I'll get back to, you know, all comments. But hopefully this was a useful video, and we'll carry on in the next one.